Rivolgo il mio cordiale saluto ai partecipanti del convegno sul tema Watershed, replenishing water values to a thirsty world.
I also offer a special welcome to the participants in the Watershed Conference on replenishing water values for a thirsty world, co-hosted by the Pontifical Council for Culture and the Argentinian chapter of the Club of Rome. Today is World Water Day, instituted 25 years ago by the United Nations, while yesterday was the International Day of Forests. I am happy that this meeting is taking place, for it represents yet another stage in the joint commitment of various institutions to raising consciousness about the need to protect water as a treasure belonging to everyone, mindful too of its cultural and religious significance. I especially encourage your efforts in the area of education through programs directed to children and young people. Thank you for all that you do, and may God bless you.
On World Water Day 2017, Pope Francis counseled the citizens of the world to protect water, the essence of life, for everyone. He urged awareness and action in the face of a global water crisis, a threat to health, security, social justice, and the living planet. His Holiness called upon his audience to be what he called sowers of hope, a hope he defined scripturally in terms of steadfastness and encouragement. This was the foundation for Watershed, replenishing water values for a thirsty world, a historical nexus of art, culture, and profound thought. Policymakers, scholars, artists, scientists, business leaders, and the faithful of many religions joined top Vatican officials in a dialogue focused on the need to unite around the shared value of water. The day was inspired by the Pope's encyclical Laudato Si, regarding humanity's relationship to the environment. It was organized by the Pontifical Council for Culture and the Club of Rome, in collaboration with Circle of Blue and the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on the Environment.
And really to respond requires more than awareness, more than money, more than celebrity, more than expertise, more than analysis, more than investment, more than technology. It requires acceptance of the scale, not denial, and marginalization as if it's going to hit somebody else in the future, in another generation. It's now. And it requires meaningful, coordinated transformation, a fundamental informed shift in mindset, and political will as well, in so many areas that all of you know well, and will that really motivates action on this. Positive action increases exponentially when new connections unite untapped. This kind of spirit of sources of individual and social genius now, based on shared mission and shared values, and that has to underpin what we're discussing. And so today, with your help, we will make hope not just visible, but predictable and achievable. Predictable and achievable. You'll be part of a global conversation with others, hopefully tuning in around the world, on the value and values of water across geographies, across space, across culture and history.
In tutte le religioni spesso c'è una fontana all'ingresso della moschea, della sinagoga, per la purificazione rituale. Dall'altra parte però l'acqua, per il suo principio, è anche la sorgente della vita, della fecondità, della trasformazione della persona. Ecco per esempio il battesimo cristiano, che attraverso l'acqua indica l'inizio di una vita nuova. È per questo motivo che è importante nell'interno di questo convegno che esistano anche sono intitolate così, water stories, delle storie di acqua, che sono però storie culturali, sono racconti, sono parabole. E io stesso ho potuto scrivere un libro intero sul Giordano, non solo dal punto di vista geografico, ma perché è uno dei grandi simboli religiosi che possono dire ancora a noi tanti messaggi.
There is a poem by Emily Dickinson that starts saying, "Water is taught by thirst." And it was Oscar Wilde who said, "We know the price of everything and the value of nothing." These poetic and literary perceptions reappear in our conference and invite us to celebrate World Water Day in the best way it can be celebrated, by replenishing water values for a thirsty world. A world with a thirst for water, and a world with a thirst for values.
We are all united in our belief that as human beings, we have the potential and also the responsibility to make a difference. Both in the audience and as speakers, we have Christians, Muslims, Jews, the three major monotheistic religions, and others spiritually and scientifically inclined. All of us have come together to honor water as the miracle molecule, symbolically and practically speaking. In Catholicism, we speak of holy water. In many faiths, water is used for the sacrament of baptism, as Cardinal Ravasi also emphasized. According to Islamic mythology, the well of Zamzam in Mecca is a miraculously generated source of water from God. In Hinduism, water represents God in a spiritual sense. Mikveh is a bath used for the purpose of ritual immersion in Judaism. We can only tackle the issue if we all, as a global family, collaborate and act accordingly.
We need a leap to the future, building on what we know today about the interconnected and the holistic system, using levers such as technologies, using levers such as social reform, political and economic incentives, using all of us, inclusive of the private sector, the public sector, civil society, to move into an area domain where instead of these interlinkages, instead of these interdependencies, move into create synergies that resulted from our understanding of the water and energy food platform that reduces the interdependencies between water, energy, and food, and hopefully improve on the equality and the distribution of these resources, and in particular, water.
Neighboring peoples are thirsty and ask for water, as Jesus did from the Samaritan woman. They sometimes have to ask water from their traditional enemies, as again in the encounter between Jesus and the Samaritan. Only a response of charity and solidarity, worked out through political and technical agreements, can offer succor to a thirsty people, and at the same time, this easing of traditional enmities can become an occasion of peace, can transform that gift of simple drinking water into living water.
It's so that together we can push for our common good. And water is one of these common goods that living in society we can act together to protect and to make available to all. Essentially, there is a certain amount of skepticism about whether all of this is possible. We've had proof lately that before certain global common goods, our world is capable of coming together in global solidarity to achieve that which is a global common good. We came together, the SDGs. It's an instance of the world coming together to pursue a global common good. When the world gathered in Paris, it was a manifestation of that. When you went to Addis Ababa to find funds to support development, it was an illustration of that. And lately, you've gone to Morocco. So our world is capable of global solidarity action whenever it finds itself before a global common good. And that, I think, is the thing that we need to push and encourage people to come on board with.
Absolutely, it's really fundamental, and I'll speak only to the Urban Resilience Challenge. And we have launched a program over the past 3 years called 100 Resilient Cities, and over 80% of those cities have identified water as a top priority related to their resilience. All of them have water in their strategy long term. So that for the foundation is fundamental, not only to resolving concerns of agricultural productivity and energy, but every aspect of urban development. And as we expect that 75% of humanity will reside in cities by mid-century, resolving that water nexus challenge within cities and within the basins that are provisioning water to cities is really fundamental to our human development endeavor.
We have a totally novel approach. And I think with Africa, Africa is here to testify. For instance, in the migration policy, which is a crucial thing, we are more in solidarity and recognizing and bringing other solutions for integration, for recognizing rights of the migrants and so forth. And we are looking as well, in a novel approach to South-South cooperation, which is absolutely crucial because you give precedence and preeminence to relations between countries which are facing the same urgency and the same, everything is urgent. You really have to satisfy the claims for human security of all the populations at large. And you cannot have really, it's very, very difficult to make the trade-offs, but still, you have to do it. And that's why principle of solidarity is absolutely basic for Morocco. We are not very rich, but we are ready to share whatever we have, because it is, interdependence has been very much underlined. It is a global world, a global continent. Either we succeed together or we fail altogether. And this approach is really very much possible to implement it if everybody is doing its part of the job. And Morocco is trying, to do its part of the job and setting, some examples without giving any lessons, because we are very arrogant and people say we are punching much above our weight, which might be true, but we have a lot of humility because we are faced with tremendous challenges that we cannot face alone.
We need to unite forces. We need to bring people from different environments, from different realities, philanthropy, educational institutions, research centers, and you can see that there's 7 points here, 7 circles. We want to reach, I use for purpose the number 7 because this is a biblical number that explain and mean the fullness. We need to reach everyone we can in every, let's say, dimension of the social life to provide for cultural and social impact.
Fast forward 28 years, and here I am, waking up every day feeling blessed with the opportunity to think and work on global issues at the World Bank, on global water issues. Last year, we were fortunate to facilitate the provision of water to more than 25 million people, and sanitation as well as irrigation systems. And last week, we had a conference with 400 staff and partners from our country offices to discuss what it would take to achieve a water-secure world for all. Fred was there, several other people were here. And we shared lessons on delivering water and sanitation services to some of the poorest communities around the world. We talked about we can't fix the pipes. We need to fix the institutions that fix the pipes. We discussed policies that help governments deliver projects at scale, national programs. We talked about sanitation without sewers and using waste as a resource. We discussed the devastating floods in Peru and the terrible droughts in the Horn of Africa, and how these disasters were the result of not only water extremes, which we are living more and more every single day, but the inability of countries to manage these extremes.
In looking for solutions, we seem to be confronted with some kind of a philosophical crisis. We ask the right questions and give wrong answers. And with the help of Laudato Si, we seem to come nearer to an understanding of the profoundness of change that we need to give the right answers. including changing our perception of the usefulness or destructiveness of selfishness.
The first is to recognize the care economy where women's time and energy is spent either in water collection or caring for the elderly and the sick, and how our economic accounting doesn't take into consideration all this unpaid time and work. And if it did, then our indicators on GDP would look very, very different. So the first is to recognize that, to use tools like gender budgeting, gender auditing, etc., which are all there and all out there, and they can be used, and they are being used, but not enough and not adequately in the water and sanitation sectors.
And finally, before I left, the community took me and showed me the tree where they found her body. I didn't know this until I lived in this village. She was 13 years old at the time of her death. This is a 13-year-old girl that hung herself because she'd walked for water one too many times. I'm pretty sure everybody in this room, everybody watching, agrees that 13-year-old girls should not be tying ropes around their neck and hanging themselves simply because they were born into areas with no clean water. See, we don't respond to statistics and numbers and data and facts. 663 million faceless people living somewhere else. But we do respond to stories if they're true.
But we do invite children from Dandara to Sweden, and now they are asked to come again and again and again. So there are thousands and thousands of children in Sweden who learn from the children of Dandara. They come to Sweden and they tell about their life. And all these thousands of children in Sweden start to think and get the perspective of what they have and what they have lost. And they say, but how can you be so happy? How can you dance? How can you sing when you live in that environment? And they say, but it's so incredible that we are alive. Imagine we live. Because that neighbor died, and then that one died, and that child died, and that mother died, and that father and that grandmother, but I'm still alive. And that touches the children of Sweden.
Art and aesthetic codes are materialization of water stories. Many water stories. We have many water stories from the past, a huge heritage, kind of archaeological layers. This kind of knowledge, also indigenous knowledge, is about to disappear. And we should catch some subtle meanings which are essential for education and for further inspiration.
We need to make a shift in our thinking. And if we're not prepared to do the shift in our thinking, then we are not going to have water for life. We need to have life. And life is water. And it is a commons, as Pope Francis has said. There is not to be debate about this. Sometimes you have to say the way it is. And that means that you have to look at reality, not through your eyes as a scientist, not through the eyes of a politician, not through the eyes of a businessman, but you have to look at reality through the eyes of your children.
So those are what astronauts see. But it's not enough to take postcard pictures. We need actionable information. And we have now fleets of satellites over our heads that take the measurements, that take the quantification, that help us really understand how the systems on our planet are working, that take the pulse of our planet. This is extraordinary. We are the first generation of human beings that have the ability to take the pulse of the planet in a snapshot, to watch it continuously, and to transform these measurements into forecasts and outlooks that give us foresight, that give us the ability to think ahead, to plan ahead, assess alternative courses of action. We're teenagers at having this space-based capability. We're babies at learning how to bring it into our decision-making in wiser ways. Much has been said today about the nexus, the water, food, energy nexus. That's close, but not quite. There's a fourth pillar, a fourth axis in that nexus, It is this. It is the planet itself. If we think about handling and managing our water needs only to meet what we want and we need for food or water or energy, we fail to consider the functioning of the planet. It is just another way to crash. We've been making that mistake for decades and decades in human decision-making.
Such approach is inspired by a cosmology, a perception of the structure of the world, or the structure of tribal reality that sees water as a conscious entity, that sees water as intimately connected with another conscious entity that we call the earth, and that sees both of them connected to a third entity that is referred to as nature. In fact, the scarcity of water is seen as a measure of the human tendency to recklessness. And therefore, it is a reminder of what kind of things we need to bring back onto our consciousness to work on taking into account that which has become scarce has become so as a reminder that somehow we humans have run out of harmony with something we cannot afford to be disharmonic with.
Because we're living beyond the capacity of the planet, we have some problems. One of those is water. The water shortages, the water pollution, access to water. But climate change is another, and is arguably even more serious. But the migration we're seeing from Africa, from places like Syria, these are all part of the same problem. So we need to bring our impact on the planet back into balance. We need to reduce our ecological footprint. That's what the Limits to Growth is about. It's not about economics. It's about the ecological impact of humanity. And we need to bring that back into balance, and we need a plan to do that.
Number one, then we have to reverse degradation in order to enhance ecosystem functions and manage watersheds properly, so that we have conserved water and soil in order to enhance productivity. So in this context, actually, annually, for 30 days, 12 to 13 million farmers actually mobilized, get out into the watershed actually to rehabilitate their ecosystem. That is very significant. You can estimate that in billions of dollars annually actually investing their labor in order to reverse degradation and enhance ecosystem through conservation work. We have seen tremendous progress. In Ethiopian highland, degradation reached with forest coverage of just 3% 12 years back. Now we recovered it to nearly 20%. So these have very significant implication on climate resilience, carbon sequestration, and productivity, and so on. So much value can be harnessed from this intervention.
This is the type of data that we couldn't even look at a year ago. So we have, with artificial intelligence and cognitive research, we can start looking at mass streams of data and not just throw numbers at people. We can understand what people are actually starting to think about. So really interesting pieces unfolding, what's going to happen in the next year, the next 5 years when we talk about initiatives. How do we track these issues? How do we shape messages and responses so that we can better manage ourselves in the water, food, energy nexus, and also in a world of water, food, energy in a changing climate?
Most of what discussions that are happening in water in the Sustainable Development Goals are national plans. And when I'm looking here, I'm seeing the manifestation of a national plan across boundaries. So it's just a beautiful story that whatever just go back to Morocco, for example. What happened if Morocco increase or reduce their phosphate production? What's the impact on the transboundary and food security in Africa and in the world, in the entire supply chain that they impact? So we're looking here at a beautiful story that maybe transcends our national boundaries in which we are confined with our policies. So when the minister is actually concerned about water security in Ethiopia, whatever he does in Ethiopia, though, will have a transboundary effect. And now we're trying to see that.
I think this is one of the most incredible conferences on water
that I've attended. Many of us meet in different places, Stockholm Water Week and all over the place, and we do a lot of talking. And I think this is what we've seen today and heard today has been most profound and touching. Having said that, I think at the level of humanity, and now that the Holy Father has taken it up, there is the basic understanding that water is fundamental to human existence and is very important. But there's a lot of talking and very little action.
The greatest challenges spark the greatest levels of ingenuity. We face some of the most daunting challenges ever. We are too complacent. We reside in conventional solutions to unconventional problems. The youth has the solutions at hand.
We feel that we deserve a place at the table, but not just at the table, but a plate to eat as well. I feel that next year, hopefully at this water conference, I'm not the only youth organization that's represented here. I want there to be 5 times as more, and then the following year for them to be 10 times as more, because for me, Zamzam means to come together, and I want to bring everyone together to understand that this is a problem that my generation is going to have to answer for. The biggest thing is people don't want to take the youth serious, and my whole initiative, my whole inspiration and motivation is to show others that the youth can accomplish something.
Thus, new approaches to water are necessary in the legislative, institutional, political, economical, technical, and ethical spheres, and consequently in the educational and cultural spheres, given that the question of water requires a long-term vision, informed by that integral ecology so well outlined by Pope Francis in Laudato Si. This long-term approach, based on an integral ecology, will require that each one of us works attentively for an education and a formation of the young directed to promoting a new culture of care, a culture of awareness towards the environment, broadly defined, and in our particular case, towards water. Referring back to the title of my brief remarks, it is perhaps in this very work of education and formation of the young that we find our moral mandate and our sacred legacy.
Wisdom and values are absolutely central to this. And if you try and understand why people are rebelling against globalization, it's because they're being left behind and feel the system's values are not theirs. They're not shared values. They're values which are leaving people behind, and I would add, leaving the planet behind. And so this attack on authority, this attack on experts, is an attack on a system which didn't have the right priorities, on a system which failed to see that we are not simply connected, but we entangled. And this is, of course, the greatest error of Brexit and protectionism. The idea of connectivity implies that you can disconnect, but when you're entangled, you cannot. Our fates are interwoven with each other, and there's no way that what happens in another place does not affect us. So we need to understand this complex integrated system and stop it falling apart. How to be connected and resilient to this connectivity is the greatest challenge, and how to embrace this technology while keeping what is essentially human, which is our values, our creativity, and our ability to make judgments. If we can do that, we've learned from the Renaissance. We've learned the lessons that our Renaissance forefathers failed to learn. And in water, this comes together in the most extraordinary ways, because there is this right to water that's been talked about, and how we manifest that, and how we ensure that we are able to add to this Renaissance watershed moment that is the title of this conference. Are we able to learn how we can each add an individual drop of change to create an ocean of change? That is the challenge we all ask.
Today, we've heard of manifold values of water: spiritual, cultural, social, economic, and ecological. We've been inspired by so many gathered here today, from an extraordinary address by His Holiness Pope Francis this morning to a rich day of dialogue featuring a wealth of leaders, all of you. Thanks to all of you, we have a more profound understanding of the power of knowledge, understanding the Earth system and the integral dependency of humanity on nature, as inimicably portrayed by Dr. Sullivan, the power of spirituality, of moral and ethical conviction, eloquently portrayed by our hosts, Cardinal Ravasi and Archbishop Gallagher, and also by Dr. Somi in his elegy to Mother Earth. The power of humanity, perhaps most movingly captured by the women and children that Scott forever etched in our minds and our hearts, but again, frankly, by all of you and the emotion and power that you bring to this dialogue. And the power of disruption and innovation embodied by the committed youth like Yusuf, who I'm inspired to know will be building a better world for my daughter and all of your children. And for which I would like to recognize the bold commitment of our partners at the World Bank to break from conventional water management practice and investment and to put people and planet at the center of its future water strategy, embracing as core goals inclusion, sustainability, and resilience as guiding principles in a massive portfolio that defines much of water practice globally. This is a genuine transformation for which the Rockefeller Foundation, and I know partners in the room, the Swedish International Development Agency and the Netherlands are extraordinarily proud to be committed partners. And if I may, I'd like to give the rest of our time back to you and wrap our dialogue with a nod in great recognition to His Holiness Pope Francis, who noted in his address to a pontifical conference on the human right to water 1 month ago that our water concerns are basic and pressing. Basic because where there is water, there is life, making it possible for societies to arise and advance. Pressing because our common home needs to be protected.
Let's work together. We've had a great day of exchange and ideas. Let's bring these people together. Let's come together and do something positive because the politicians are not doing it, certainly most of them. And the second point I want to make, just to close, is please let's forget the bigger picture. It's not just a question of scaling up lots of small initiatives. We are winning lots of battles, but we are currently losing the war. We need to have a much bigger vision for where we're going. We need to change the overall system if we're all to survive for the next 100 or 200 years. So please, let's work together and let's not forget the big picture.
Every astronaut that has ever had this view comes back, and their strongest impulse is to take everyone they know up to that place and let them see this perspective. Human beings don't change their minds and they don't change their practices because they heard something, not hearing something new. They change because they experienced something new, something that changes them from inside. All of the 500 and some people who have had this experience have come back to Earth different than when they left. We all wish we had some way to bottle it and give it to you to drink or inject it in you so you would know that too. But as we talk here today and we go forward from here to think about how to bring fresh perspective, new ethos to the youth of our planet, as an educator I say, be sure we're creating opportunities for students to do something, to experience something, not just to read something, certainly not to hear something from us. They must shape their world. They will shape our world. Let's give them experiences that let them start learning how to do that and start learning how to do it in community across boundaries. There are millions and millions of children walking the face of this earth right now, depending on this planet, living from its systems, looking to us, as His Holiness has said, looking to us to muster the foresight to care for this planet of ours well. Pope Francis has counseled us and cautioned us to beware of the foolishness of thinking that we can substitute something engineered for the irreplaceable and irretrievable beauty and bounty of this planet that we have. He's counseled us in the encyclical to remember that it is, yes, about the needs of humankind for water, yes, about the rights of each human being to water, but it is also about the needs of every other organism on the planet and the planet itself. So let's look at all four elements of this nexus, and as the Pope has invited us and urged us, let's take better care of this home planet.